Seattle House Mafia.
All right, welcome to another episode of Industry Interviews in the Seattle House Mafia studio. I'm Phil, your host, and our guest today just performed with the Shameless crew at Decked Out, also at Fractured at High Dive, and for People Music recently at the Monkey Loft. She has releases on Uniting Souls Music, Underscore, 17 Audio, Late Night Monkeys, and Gigabeat Recordings, as well as collaborations with Melton Wax and Hector Rodriguez. She actually hosts some current nights too. There's Steam at the Orient Express, Sempa, which is the third Wednesday at Substations. We'll talk about that in a second. And then, as I mentioned before, Fractured, which is in Fremont. Last Wednesday?
Last Wednesday. Yeah.
I'm going to be honest. It's really hard to keep track of all the shit that you're doing.
I kind of do a lot of things.
And she is also the label manager for Underscore Recordings. Please welcome Mindy Christman, a.k.a. Miss Min.D. How are you?
I'm amazing.
Did I hit all the points? There was a lot. I didn't want to skip anything, but I was like, the first thing that came to mind was, God damn, that's why I asked you if you had a day job, because there's a lot going on with you.
Yeah.
Well, first, I always like to start off with a little story about how we ended up connecting. So, you know Sherman Crawford. Mm-hmm. I don't know how well you know him. Buddy of mine. I just really got to know him this year, sort of at the tail end of COVID. And he came in, did an interview and a mix. And then I was talking to him about it after the fact. You know, we were just kind of, deloading on the whole experience. And he's like, hey, man, I don't want to overstep, but you know who you should really have in there is Miss Min.D. And I go, dude, I actually reached out to her yesterday. So
nice.
It's funny that how those synchronicities happen. Yeah. And I think it was a few different things. I saw you at the Bounce Brunch, also saw you at Monkey, and just I've been seeing your name everywhere. Plus you have a ton of things in the works. And his words were, legit, she is making shit happen. That was Sherman's words exactly. So,
well, thank you, Sherman.
Yes,
I appreciate you.
Yeah. So, well, let's talk about that for a second. I mean, you're putting out music, you're playing with a bunch of different crews, you're running your own nights, you're collaborating. I guess that's part of the music production thing, and you also have a day job, I just learned. So how are you balancing all that right now?
Lots of calendars. Calendar. Yeah. It's all about intentional time, where you put that time. I've also really learned how to automate through tools like Facebook Suite and stuff like that. So a lot of my promotional things, I sit down on a Sunday for 2 hours and I plan the whole week out, and they're all auto posts. Because if I had to live on social media, I mean, I do have to live on social media, but if I have to do all those posts, like running my nights and promoting myself, like I realized that when I came out of the pandemic, it was actually very detrimental to my mental health. So I had
just the social thing.
Yeah. So I had to find ways to automate and to, so if I sit down, it also helps me not be so redundant.
Right.
So when I'm looking at everything I'm promoting and all the pages I'm promoting, or me as an artist as well, I can mix up the content in a way that instead of just sharing a flyer each time, for instance, I try to be more creative and I can see everything with a bird's eye when I sit down and automate it all.
So you're essentially having to do what we all have to do in our day jobs at some point, is figure out how to scale, right? How to scale one person doing a bunch of different things with a bunch of different responsibilities. And I think that's one of the hardest things I've found with doing the more creative stuff, is taking that same philosophy of scaling myself and being able to do it effectively, especially with social media, because social media can be super annoying.
And delegating too. So it's like, and having boundaries too. So like, I really have to put some boundaries in place with some of the people that I work with, where I'm not necessarily doing all the work, but I'm helping create the work and delegating someone to do the work. So I have crews that help me in the things that I'm running monthlies on. So it's not just me by myself doing those things. I'm just either a leader or a part of the jog wheel that is helping make it happen. Yeah. So delegating is super important, and being honest with your capacity.
Yeah.
Is really the only way that you'll make it.
Well, and honest with the people around you. I mean, at some point, like, my crew, Paul and Sangdo, like, we have to be very direct with each other, and feelings sometimes take a back seat when I mean, we just gotta get through it, because there's other things, like there's more important things than our feelings in the moment sometimes.
Yeah, and you have to communicate that consistently.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's very cool. Yeah, I was wondering about that, just looking at the vast array of things you're involved with, like how you, because I put myself in your shoes and I was like, thank you. Especially like throwing nights too, because throwing, I mean, you tell me if I'm my impression out of like producing, DJing, and actually throwing events, I think probably my thought is the most groundwork and the most stress is probably throwing an event.
Correct. Yeah. Because you got to get people there. Yeah. And plus side is when you're out there doing all those other things anyway, they all kind of feed each other.
Right.
Right. So it's like my involvement with all these different things only helps my involvement with all these things, if that makes sense. Yeah. So if I'm out there being a DJ, I'm automatically promoting myself in all of those things. When I'm asked to come play a break set, I'm automatically promoting Fractured, and I'll bring promotional materials when I go do those things as well. Like most of my business cards just have like a little QR code on them. They're little business cards. And I like have those to hand out as I'm at these events that I'm going to be at anyways, because I'm either playing or promoting, or so it all feeds into each other a little bit.
Was there ever a moment where you were self-conscious about doing it that way, like promoting yourself, like playing an event, but also promoting your night, but also promoting yourself, but also promoting your latest release? You know what I mean?
I mean, I've been doing this for almost 20 years.
Okay.
So, I definitely try to be careful sometimes when I'm at other people's events. But if I'm there promoting and I'm playing a break set, like I'm going to promote Fractured. Like that's just the way that it is, right? But if I'm playing like a house music event, I try my best to, and that's another reason why I'm involved in multiple things. It's because, I'm going to promote Underscore tonight because Underscore is more house music focused. Okay. It's not a breakbeat thing.
Right.
So I switch focuses and promote Underscore instead. But I don't necessarily think I've been self-conscious about it just because I've been doing it for so long. Yeah. There is a fine line between like advocating for yourself and like, I don't know. I think I've always contained the finesse and but still being humble, when people give me compliments or whatever. Like I don't try not to get a big head about it or think, I'm not going to go around and tell everyone I'm the shit or whatever. Right. But I may tell my best friend that, because obviously you need somebody to gas you up.
Right.
But staying humble is super important because, that. Yeah.
I love to hear about somebody's origin story. I think it's so interesting. Even if it doesn't feel like an interesting origin story, it's always interesting to me to find out, like, how did you get in dance music? Are you first of all, are you from Seattle?
I'm actually from Wyoming.
Okay.
Casper, Wyoming.
Wow. Okay.
In the middle of nowhere. So in 2002, my boyfriend at the time, he wanted to be the DJ. He got a belt-driven, you remember those Gemini belt-driven turntables that were like in a clear colored casing, and they all came in a preset pack with a little 2-channel mixer?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he got that like set, right? And a local DJ who we were friends with, because we were getting into electronic music around that time. It was 17 years old, 16, 17.
Right.
And keep in mind, I'm in Wyoming, so there's not like a lot of us necessarily doing that. We really had to make our own events.
And this is vinyl only at this point?
Mm-hmm, yeah. Okay. And so anyways, the local DJ had given us a crate of records.
I see.
And I started messing around with them, just playing around with them or whatever. And then I started to get a little bit better than my boyfriend at the time. And he didn't like it. He was like, this is supposed to be my thing. And I was like, okay, like I'm not attached to it. It's fine, Well, then we broke up. And then I was like, I think I want to learn how to do this. So I went to the local DJ that gave us the records, who ended up being my boyfriend later.
Shocking.
I know,
How did I know that was how that was going to
yeah. But he was a great teacher. He really supported me in teaching me, and he taught me a lot. He taught me so much about sound. I actually ended up moving to Seattle with him.
Okay.
We were together like 5 or 6 years, and so he just gave me, I started with UK Hard House. So, Tidy Tracks, Nucleus.
Yep.
And I started with that genre. And he just gave me like 4 records, and he was like, play these until you can play them, until you can beat match them. And then I moved to Washington when I was 19, pretty early in my life. For multiple reasons. A lot of it was there wasn't really a lot for the arts in Wyoming, and I've always just considered myself very artistic in a lot of different ways, especially musically, and there just wasn't really opportunity, and to get away from drugs, because drugs are bad.
Sure. Well, so musically, were you involved with other kinds of music, or playing an instrument, or in band, or
so I have a pretty deep musical background with my parents. My mom was actually a piano singer in a bar.
Okay.
That's how she met my dad.
Wow.
And so she was a trained piano player. My sister could play piano by ear. I could never learn the piano, and I'm kind of bummed now that I'm producing music that I didn't learn how to play the piano. But I did like trumpet, band. I was in choir, a cappella, and then I played the guitar in high school. So musically, I've always been like, my mom loves disco. Like, my disco roots come from my mom. And then she became like the local karaoke host.
In Wyoming.
Later in life, yeah.
I gotcha. Okay.
That was her like side gig.
Yeah.
That wasn't her day job. That was like on the weekends.
Right.
She would do that. So I would like enter competitions and like do lots of karaoke.
Like karaoke competitions. Literally, you enter karaoke. I just want to make sure we capture this.
Yes.
That
Karaoke.
Miss Min.D was a karaoke queen in Casper, Wyoming.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. You didn't give me that when it came to your intro bullet, so see, I started digging though.
So musically, I have a lot of musical background.
Right. And so Seattle was change, obviously, and getting away from maybe old cliques and drugs, but also there was probably the opportunity for seeing more availability around the arts, right?
Yeah. So my the partner I moved here with, he was going to audio production school at Seattle Art Institute.
You really hit a home run with that dude.
Yeah.
Right?
And he taught me and on the side, he, as his side job, he would run sound at like the art fair or like different gigs like that. So I was just around it all the time. And we started a production company pretty early into us moving here.
Okay.
And we actually lived up in Bellingham first. Ferndale to be exact.
Yep.
And then we moved down to Bellingham, and then we moved down to Seattle. But we started Skunky Beats up in Bellingham, which was our first production company. And then we eventually moved down to Seattle, and so we just were always throwing parties, always throwing events.
And were these like in venues, or were these in the woods? Were these kind of
a little bit of both?
Okay.
There was a couple venues that we did in Bellingham. Here in Seattle, we used to throw parties at the Orb, the old Rainier Brewery, up on the top. So it had like a really cool warehouse feel. Yeah. Because it was like some outdoors and then some indoors. Some really, really good events there. We also did like the King Cat back in the day.
Sherman and I were reminiscing about the King Cat and how like fucking amazing that place was. So unbelievable.
And then Motor.
Okay.
Yeah, Motor was like one of the last venues.
That's in Capitol Hill. Down.
Motor is actually in Soto, right next to the Krispy Kreme. It rebranded as the Comeback recently.
Okay.
And that's gone now too. But
so they're not doing things there anymore.
No.
Interesting. And so you're doing basically one-offs there, or were you guys doing nights as well?
We were doing like quarterly events, so we were doing more, and they were more raves,
right?
Multiple genres, multiple stages, and we would try to do all ages or 18 and up. And this was like before the laws changed,
right? With
all ages parties.
Were you bringing in headliners from? Okay,
yeah. So like, I think Lazy Rich was one of the ones we brought in. I don't know if you remember Palmer and Puka.
I remember seeing the name. I remember seeing the name.
They were like break beats, AK 1200.
Yep.
I'm trying to remember who.
No, I know. I'm making you go way deep.
Yeah, and keep in mind, Skunky Beats also had like a whole section of hardcore. I'm not into hardcore, but my buddy Doughboy is like, he has loved happy hardcore and hardcore since the 7th grade, and he moved here with us, and he's still doing that. Yeah, he's part of the Seattle hardcore.
Very cool.
With Ian K and all of them, and Jiminy Cricket.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I went down. It's funny you say that. I went down like a vintage like 90s hardcore party wormhole on YouTube, and they look like they have so much fun.
Yeah.
But they're like living in a different world from like Friday evening to like Monday morning, then they go to work. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
The UK scene was crazy, and I'm sure there was some of that here too. But
yeah,
it's just that was never been my music of my genre of choice. But like, props to them for how hard they go.
Right? Yeah, stomping hella fast.
Yeah. Okay, so that makes sense. So you started this stuff in Seattle. It sounds like you're having some success. Would you say you were having some success?
Yeah, we had some pretty big events.
And what year are we talking?
We're talking 2008 2005 to like 2007, I'd say.
Got it.
And then about 2008, I ended up breaking up with that person, and and then I kind of went my own way, and then I started doing more club. I was 21
right
at that point. So I started doing more clubs. So that was when it switched to like residencies at Knock Knock, Last Supper Club,
yep.
Contour, yep. And part of Broken Grooves and all sorts of different events.
And there was a lot of spots then too. Because there was still Trinity. I think Merchants Cafe might have still been there. There was like all these.
Yeah,
all these
it was
places.
Robust.
There was robust is the right word, because I think I was raving, late 90s, early 2000s, and I think I'm a little bit older than you. Then I started going to the clubs a little bit sooner, so I missed sort of that segment of the raves that you guys were doing. But I was then starting to do clubs myself and going out to clubs. So, but there's so much going on at that time. It's fun to talk to somebody, because I've had a lot of people who are a little bit more new school, besides like Sherman and John Lee and Terry and those guys. Yeah. But like Rachel and Amy, they didn't get to see like that 2007, 2010, like it was cracking like here in Seattle.
Yeah.
And you could go see different stuff. You could see a break show. Yeah. There was like, sometimes there was 2 rooms with down tempo in the front.
And I think D&B Tuesdays was at the War Room.
Yes.
Yeah. And then Onset was at Temple Billiards.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's like the history runs deep, and I actually feel super blessed to have lived here this long.
Yeah.
And really gotten a taste of the history of here in Seattle. Yeah.
And Last Supper Club was such a fun place.
Oh yeah, it was one of my favorite venues. Yeah. And Contour, of course, because trusty old Contour.
Yeah.
R.I.P. Yeah.
I know. I don't. And the sad part, like, I'd love to talk to somebody at some point who's got the history of how, I know some of it was COVID, but a lot of this stuff closed down before COVID happened.
Yeah.
There's just so much drama and history. And
and I think Contour was subject to the COVID thing, because they were open before COVID hit. Mm-hmm.
So, but you weren't producing music at this point?
No, I've only been producing music about 4 years or so. Really started really full time when the pandemic hit, which is pretty common. I've realized in some of like Amy really hit it hard when the pandemic hit, because it was like, oh, I don't have all these bookings, I don't have all this DJing, like I have no excuse. I already had started to take lessons before COVID had hit.
So talk to me about taking lessons.
Yeah. So I started learning from Jason Melton.
Okay.
So I ended up living with him as his roommate, and I asked for one-on-one lessons. He was also hosting what is now SEMPA, which is now what I run. We used to have a class at our house. So I started taking fundamentals from him before the pandemic hit.
Just like production fundamentals.
Yeah, just production fundamentals.
Okay.
So we started making a track together. And then actually John Lee gave me my first opportunity to remix one of his tracks for Late Night Munchies.
Nice.
I think it was called Lost Away. I think it was called. It's been a little while.
Yeah.
So I took that opportunity, obviously, even though I was still novice, but I took the opportunity with Jason.
Sure.
I was like, I want to take the opportunity, but I was like, can it be Jason and I that do the remix? Because I was still super green.
Right.
So we did a remix together, and it was a really good lesson on, taking someone's stems and remixing a track of theirs. And then from there, I just kind of took off with it and just kind of started making my own things. And I don't make just one genre.
Yeah.
I have several different genres. I'm a multi-genre DJ,
Yep.
as well as I even have things that I wouldn't even play necessarily. Like I have like a chill step track on my Bandcamp called Dreamscape.
I was actually going to ask how close, because I know you play multi-genre, how close your production kind of maps to the genres that you play.
Yeah, I'm trying to still kind of find my voice as an artist. But I have the most opportunity in breakbeats.
Okay.
But I've made a lot of house music. There's so many house music labels in Seattle. It's like the opportunity's like right there for me. I just have to produce the content.
Right.
And like I was just on Uniting Souls summer compilation, and I hit number 3 on the Funky House chart, which was the first time I've even charted that high, which is amazing. But as far as like networking goes and scale of not just Seattle, I've made a lot of connections in the breakbeat realm. Like,
why do you think that is? Is it just house is more common, more popular, or is there a bunch of different reasons?
well, running Fractured, like that's,
sure.
And there is 1 or 2 femme people,
Yeah.
in that realm at all, really, that are charting. There's a little bit more now, and there's probably people that I don't even know about. But there's just so much underrepresentation of femme and in those areas that it's like, and I've already made all the networking. Like I know who runs the labels because I've brought them here to play music for me.
Right.
And in those conversations, I take them to dinner and I pick their brain and I make sure to make that connection. So when I am at a point where I'm making enough breakbeats,
Right.
they're actually really difficult to make.
Oh, really? Interesting. Yeah. You find it harder than making house music?
House music's much easier for me to do. There's also like, what's difficult about breakbeats is how do I make this sound intriguing without overproducing it? How do it's really in the sound design. Okay, well, how do I balance the sub and the mids and the high? Yeah. Like there's the intricacies that go into, and breakbeats is like very energetic, and there's portions of it that aren't. Some of it is dark and dirty, which is kind of a little more where I'm at anyway. But as far as where I'm at as a producer, it takes me way longer to make a breaks track that I would actually want to play.
Right.
I've made some breaks tracks, but some of them I don't want to play.
You answered it a little bit, but I actually was quizzing Sherman a little bit about breakbeat because he's a bit of a breaks head too, right?
He sure is.
What is it about breakbeat that gets you? Like, why do you like breakbeat, or is there like something, or does it just fall under that you just like electronic music and different flavors?
It's definitely the syncopation. It's like it's just more intriguing to me. It's more trying to kind of put me on the spot here.
No,
I'm
no.
like, how? What else do I like about it? Like house is, I don't want to call house basic.
Totally. You can.
But I don't want it.
Just
Because
kidding.
there's so many
so
forms
many.
of it.
Oh, absolutely.
And I mean, if you really think about it, breaks also has the same formula up underneath, right?
Yeah.
Like house is like it has a very particular
Sure.
underneath, but so does breaks. So it's like, I don't know. I like kind of dark and grimy, bassy music, period, in my body and in my soul. And I've been playing breaks probably 15 of the years that I've been playing music. I've gone through a lot of different genres.
Is breaks like the one that you just keep anchoring back to, though?
Yeah, and a lot of it probably has to do with my roots in hip hop.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I love hip hop music. I also like gangster rap. It is very misogynistic, but I'm from the 90s, so it's like
I know.
It's like
It's hard to hate that shit because we grew up with it, right?
Yeah. So, I tend to have, depending on the party, I try to watch who I'm playing for. But if I play for like Slut Garden, they like it dirty and raunchy and grimy.
I love it. No, and it was a tough question. In fairness to you, and one of the things that when Sherman and I were talking about was breaks are interesting because they can either be used to build tension, or they can be used to completely blow the fucking roof off a place. Like there's some, if you use them right, like even in a house or a techno set, like you can just destroy it.
And it's unexpected.
Yes.
It's I don't know. I just find them very intriguing and there's still like emotion behind it, and they're super energetic. And like I didn't really necessarily get on the dubstep bandwagon, but that was kind of when breaks supposedly died, was when dubstep became a thing. But it's basically a super 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 slow down breakbeat anyway.
Right. No, totally. No, I love that you love breaks. That was actually when I first heard, actually at a rave, I heard Donald going back and forth between like breaks and techno, breaks and house, whatever you want to call it. We just called it techno, whatever back then. That was when I fell in love with breakbeat, and those were the first records I was buying were breakbeat.
Yeah, Donald Glaud's actually on Fractured Nation as one of our residents.
He's such a monster.
Yeah, I do have a cool story though.
Yeah, please.
I booked DJ Dan.
Nice.
To come play breaks for my birthday.
I love
it. Pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
And we were at Monkey Loft, and because we used to have a bi-monthly at Monkey Loft on a Friday, and that would be where I would bring my headliners. Because I used to have a Sunday night at Cremwork, and that was a weekly.
Okay.
And that's not always where you like. I couldn't always bring my headliners there, so I also did a bi-monthly at Monkey Loft. Anyway, Dan came, and Dan, he's so stoic. He like doesn't smile really. He's just stoic.
Yeah.
That's just who he is. So he came to play breaks, and I've never seen him smile so much, first of all, in a set. And I was standing behind him, and he turns around and he's like, "Am I doing good?"
That's hilarious.
I was like, "Dan, of course you're doing good." Yeah. And I was like, look. Anyway, it was super funny.
Isn't it amazing, those artists that you look up to, or that you've brought in because they're a big name, and they have that sort of like, they still need to be reaffirmed sometimes, which is cool. Like that means they actually give a shit about what they're doing. It's the ones that don't need that, I think, that I worry about, because they're just like, this is a job. I'm getting 5 figures for this. Like,
Dan is a lovely human.
Yeah.
He's so humble.
Yeah.
No,
he seems like a cool guy. I met him long ago, and I actually think at some point I like opened for him at Medusa when he was playing, when they used to bring in headliners for house sets.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a very cool guy.
Awesome.
Yeah. No, that's a cool story. And so Donald as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he's here this weekend actually.
I think isn't he playing in the forest somewhere, or under a bridge? It's under. I think there's a gig under a bridge somewhere.
Yeah, those Renegades.
Yeah.
Under that First Avenue. I mean, I don't know where it's at.
I don't know where it's at either. But I know I saw pictures, and I might have stopped by, and there was hundreds of kids there. It was a pretty good party,
It's
honestly.
not a secret anymore, but yeah.
Hopefully we didn't let the cat out of the bag. It will be done before this airs, so it will be fine.
It's totally fine. They pretty much throw events under that bridge a lot now. It used
How
to
does
be,
that happen? Do you
You
know?
just got to first come, first serve. You got to show up. And now people are starting to collaborate a little bit. I went under there recently, and there were 3 stages under there.
I know.
Yeah, and if you park enough cars in between, or if you put the stages back to back like this and point them this way, then they won't bleed. Yeah, it's very weird.
And they're literally bringing sound. The neighbors don't care. Just
Well, it's an industrial area.
Yeah,
So there is no neighbors.
There's no neighbors.
There's no neighbors.
But still, you know, somebody would complain at some point. But no, that's so cool.
Yeah.
But that's the shit I love, right?
Yeah.
And I think you coming from the rave scene and being involved for 20 years, you probably have felt those special moments.
Oh, yeah.
With these, like, this party should not be happening now, and this music should not be this good, and there should not be this many people here.
Yeah.
And we are killing it right now. Right? Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. So I feel like we kind of covered your history and we're sort of bleeding into now where you are today, like what's going on. And we go back to the original thing, which I was just like a little bit dizzy trying to figure out how many things you're involved with and looking at your different nights and organizing that. So one of the questions I had, purely selfishly, is out of like DJing, producing, and throwing events, like, do you love one kid more than the other?
Well, that's a great question. So right now, I am having a hard time with some balance of it all.
Yeah.
Because I kind of need to choose between. I'm trying to switch my mentality from a DJ focused mentality to a musician and artist focused mentality, which means less DJ bookings. And right now it's summertime, so I'm kind of just letting it fly. I'm just kind of like,
Yeah.
I'll make music when I can. I want to stay somewhat relevant and not
Sure.
say no to everything, you know. I've also got super choosy and picky a little bit about what nights I'm involved in and what I'm doing. And I'm still targeting certain ones that I haven't played before and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I'm not just saying yes to everything that's coming through. Because I really do want to focus more on producing. Because that's just my next step, you know. Like, I've been DJing for so long, and I love DJing. It's a great expression, and I won't stop doing that, but it's time to think a little bit broader and bigger than just Seattle. Yeah, and that requires me to make music, and that requires me to make time to make music.
Right.
Yeah, so that's definitely personally, I love that part of it. But they all serve a different purpose, right? So promoting events and hosting events, obviously I love to create a vibe for people to come and enjoy themselves and
Sure.
and let loose and be one with music. I also like to give opportunities. So Fractured definitely I pride myself in giving new DJs or DJs that haven't played breaks before. So I do kind of a mixture where I have my showstopper. So I have the one person that is either going to bring the people or is a little more popular or whatnot. I have one debut usually in the beginning and then some residents on there.
That's so cool, though.
Yeah. So I try to, like my next show actually for Fractured is on the 23rd. And it's going to be a drum and bass night because I do drum and bass quarterly. And 3 of the people haven't ever played Fractured before. So it's like finding those new people to give opportunities to. So it kind of serves that purpose for me.
Yeah, I think there's a misconception, and I've seen, and I've actually been on the other side of this too, where you feel like a crew has a venue lockdown or a night lockdown. They're only letting their favorites in and they're
Yeah.
not. And I think it's really special. And I think there's enough talent here in Seattle where you can do what you're doing, where you're
Yeah.
reaching out. Like, you're doing it in a very balanced, smart way.
Yeah.
You're
It
not
was way easier when I had a weekly, let me say.
Oh, for sure.
When I had a weekly, it was like way easier to give more people opportunities.
Totally.
So it's a little harder almost to have to be pickier.
Yeah.
Because you only have 4 slots a month that you're trying to promote, and it's like who deserves those? Like, who am I to decide that?
But you also have to have a successful night, and there's bar staff, and there's a venue, and there's they're trusting in you too, which is what I always thought was super stressful about, putting on events, which I never really got into it.
Yeah. Well, and Fracture just went through that actually, like we had to exit Crimwork, and we were there for 6 years.
Okay.
For
doing a monthly there for 6 years.
We were doing a weekly for I'd say 4 of those years, and then pandemic, and then like when we came back, I tried to do the weekly for like 8 months, and I was like, I'm going to die. It was too much. I was like, this is way too much work. I had a really hard time grasping everything coming out of the pandemic of like what my responsibilities are, what my passions are, because everything shifted, right? So it's like, what space do I belong in? So I decided not to do a weekly anymore, and I switched it to a monthly. And then we had to venue shop. Was that a decision, or was it? We don't need to get into it if there's drama or anything, but I hear these rattlings about certain venues, and Oh, it was a decision. Yes. Yeah. I won't go into too many detail because I don't want to talk badly or anything. But it's it was just time. It was time. We weren't welcome anymore in the way we wanted to be, and logistical things were getting messed up, and I was just like, I'm gonna go. So then I hit up the High Dive because like Reflect was there, and they were starting to just do more homegrown electronic music there. And
did they have like a management shift or something? Because I remember specifically the High Dive being very live music focused.
So they still are.
Yeah.
And they also own Nectar. So Nectar and High Dive are owned by the same people.
Okay.
They have been prominently bands, and they still do a lot of bands.
Totally.
But I've noticed that even Nectar started doing more electronic music, like Future Primitive, and all those different things started to kind of.
You go see Farina. The last time I saw Farina, I think was at Nectar, right?
Yeah.
Played Mushroom Jazz. Yeah, for sure.
So I think taking that knowledge and information, they have the High Dive where they can make it a little more local focused.
Yeah.
And I haven't been able to bring a headliner there yet or anything because I have a Wednesday and it's a little tough to do a Wednesday. But we're starting to regrow again, but it's like being displaced and have to go somewhere else. It's like I have to remind people and re-promote, and we started at the end of the winter time, right before spring.
Right.
So we had some good shows, and we had some not so good shows where no one showed up.
Yep.
And so we're kind of always at risk of potentially not being able to stay if we can't get the people there.
Right.
So that is stressful.
Yeah.
It is stressful. But at the end of the day, I can only do the best that I can to promote the sound and have my crew promote, and
And it's primarily breakbeat besides the drum and bass. So
anything broken. So we do breaks, drum and bass, and UK garage.
Yeah, and I think that for whoever's listening hasn't explored like things broken, like just go give it a chance.
Yeah.
You get hooked. I mean, there's a different intensity, there's a different energy. There's it may not be your like core thing, but there's some magic, right, in breakbeat. I always thought so. And
one of my favorite things is having house prominent DJs come and explore what breakbeats means to them, And I don't always ask for a mix from everybody. I just ask them that they send me some tracks on like, okay, well, what style of breaks? Like, there's just as many subgenres of breaks as there is house, you know?
Sure.
So it's like, what kind of vibe are you bringing to the table? I can book around it and whatnot.
No, I mean, that's also sounds very intentional and very smart too, the way you think about actually mapping the styles that make sense for the night. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if everybody thinks about it that deeply. I mean, you'd probably know better than me event throwing, but sometimes shit feels a little bit scattered when you go to a house.
Well, it's all about communication with the artist, and that also within that there's so many professional DJs here in Seattle. So I recently, the People Music lineup,
Yep.
we got added to the loft, and Simpo was before me, and then Goner was after me.
Right.
And all of us just communicated.
Yeah.
Hey, what styles are you bringing?
Yeah.
What do you know what you're going to end on? Even though like we don't have to cater to each other, but the reason why we did that, and I'm glad that we did, it made that night seamless in the genre, and we went through all sorts of genres.
But with a fluidity, probably that wouldn't have been there if you guys wouldn't have communicated.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. So it's like that happens naturally sometimes, where it's like so many people are multi-genre in Seattle now that we kind of have to just hit up that DJ before us and just be like, hey, what's your vibe?
Yep.
So we as professionals cannot make our vibe too jarring. Work into it. You got to work into it.
No, I agree with you. Like it can be a little bit abrasive sometimes when you hear that hard. It's like it's like a gear shift. Sometimes you're like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
New DJ's on, I guess.
Yeah.
So no, and I think it's fun for a DJ to be able to come off another DJ's vibe in a way that feels cohesive and challenging, and then get into their own shit without it just being like a punch.
Right.
Yeah.
And not every situation's like that.
No.
You just have to come prepared with an arsenal.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I totally agree. So outside of all this music stuff that you do, well, two questions. What do you listen to at home when nobody's watching you, when you're not performing, when you're not playing? Like, what's your go-to? Is it gangster rap? Be honest.
Sometimes.
Me too.
Sometimes that's my mood. I definitely have I really have been into like African hip hop. So like Samba the Great is a great example. I would say it's a little more on the chiller side, but vibey. FKJ, like that. You know who that is?
No. I just act like I know who it is.
So he's like a loop guy
Okay.
that has a bunch of different instruments.
Got it.
Yeah. So he has some pretty good music, like neo soul or funk, acid jazz.
Yep.
And then like at work, I'll listen to like lo-fi or chill step or something with no words. That's just instrumental. Cause I can't listen to words, when I'm working, cause it sometimes distracts me. And then, I'll that's also a good time for me to like listen to other people's mixes, or like if there's people that are sending me stuff, I'll try to listen to it at work. When I have a time where I'm going to be sitting at my desk for an hour or whatnot.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say, like, for the folks that are listening, like, is that one of the ways you operate and discover new talent, is people send you mixes? Is that a pretty common practice? Is that
it's still a pretty common
and
practice.
you're pretty open to it?
Yeah. I am definitely open to it. I may not always give feedback on the thing or whatnot, but I love when people send me mixes of what they're doing, and whether or not they want to be booked at Fractured or booked somewhere, just sometimes they'll just send me mixes to just ask me what I think. I also have quite a few artists, because I'm involved with SIMPA, that just send me tracks for feedback.
Got it.
Outside of class. So
and I don't want to skip the SIMPA thing, because I think that's super important.
It is super important.
So let's talk about that for a second. So what, like I'm a 2-year-old, what exactly is it?
So SIMPA is short for Seattle Electronic Music Producer Association.
Okay.
It's a mouthful. But it originally was a class that started in Jason Melton's basement. And then it kind of grew when we all moved in together. We were hosting classes at our house weekly. And it was very like intimate. And Amy actually started there, her career there. So like what was cool is we could take the people that needed to learn fundamentals, they could go upstairs and learn fundamentals with Jason on a smaller group, and then the more experienced people would stay downstairs and like jam together, or we would like talk about something a little more intricate or experienced.
Okay.
So we could separate the two. Unfortunately, we don't have that now, but and then the pandemic hit and we did take it online. We did a lot of online things. So we had 3 roommates. We were all good at AV and stuff like that. So we took our feedback sessions online, so people still had something to look forward to get feedback from us, as well as in the chat and like all that. And then Jason decided to be a digital nomad and leave the country. Nice. Good job, bro. Good job.
Mission accomplished.
Goals. And so he kind of was just like, hey, like I'm going to be leaving the country. So I was like, okay, so either this dies with Jason, or I just take the baton and just run with it.
So you take your full plate and you push like make a little space, and now you're.
But it actually has become a top tier of what's important to me. Yeah, because so we started doing a monthly at Timber Room. They were allowing us to do it there, and basically what we do is we meet once a month, and we'll have someone either come do a producer showcase, or one of the moderators will teach something for an hour, and then we would do track feedback. But you get to listen to your track on the loud sound system that is made for a club,
which nobody gets to do if they're producing in their bedroom. Right?
Yeah. And like, they may not be DJs.
Yeah.
They may not have the opportunity to go to a sound check where, like, I'm going to be sound checking twice this month, where I'm just going to put it on the sound system and I can sound check my own stuff with my own stuff. Right. Like, I have that access, but a lot of people don't have access to that. And some people are shy, and some people don't necessarily want to do that. Also, it's like, playing your track in the middle of a set and not knowing if it's going to sound good is intimidating. Sure. You know, so it was actually, that's what people ended up loving the most about it. But we also do remix contests and stuff like that. Yeah. So we work with local labels, and we've done a Late Night Munchies one. We've done Underscore. So now we're at Substation, third Wednesdays of the month. So AC Lewis, thank you, has allowed us to use his space every third Wednesday. Nice. And summer has dwindled a little bit in the class attendance, but fall time has been super, like 20-25 people coming, you know, and I just love the student aspect of, and like I've also met people, and now that I have my own studio space, I can invite them over and be like, hey, you don't know fundamentals, because we don't really have a fundamental area of the class. So I kind of try to offer my time when I can. And if people get on my calendar, like I'll honor that time. They just come over to my house and hang out for a couple hours, and then I show them how to do fundamentals.
So is there, like, how does somebody get involved? Is there a cost? Like what's
it's free. There's no cost. Just show up. Wow. We also have a private group. So if you can't attend in person, that's fine. We also stream on Twitch when we're doing the classes, and then the classes stay live on Twitch for 14 days. So we actually just had Quadrant and Iris who do drum and bass. And then this month we actually have John Lemon from Viva Recordings.
I might know that guy.
Yeah.
John's amazing.
Yeah. And he's actually going to be sponsoring the next remix contest. Wow. Yeah.
I love being surprised. Like I said, I'm not going to beat the dead horse about how busy you seem, but I just love hearing how much you're sort of giving back in your own way and supporting the community in your own way through these different avenues, whether it's listening to some random DJ's mix and giving them feedback, or helping DJs or non-DJs make tracks and letting them hear. Like, that's pretty fucking awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah. No, I had no idea about some of this stuff. So this is really cool.
Yeah.
This is why I like to not know somebody super well when they come in, because it's like I'm just so surprised. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So all that, what's the future look like? Like, are you on the path? I know you talked about maybe DJing. You want to go bigger on the production side, maybe national, international, but is that to facilitate more DJing, like festival type things, or what's the
little
vision?
bit of both.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I would like to have some tracks under my belt, so like next year I'm going to go to Winter Music Conference.
Hell yeah.
And I already have the connections there. I just got to get there, and I'd like to have some music under my belt. And I produce music with Gigabit Recordings, who does like a pool party during that time, so like I've already made those connections. I just got to be like, hey, I'm going to come do the thing.
Yeah. I'm
really trying to advocate for myself a little bit more in these bigger spaces. And then I play out of town sometimes, I'm going to play in Sacramento in November. Fracture related,
So it breaks.
Yeah. And Fracture's actually in 6 cities.
Yeah, I didn't know this either.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Fractured is in LA, San Francisco. We're actually not in 6 cities anymore. I lied. We've had a couple chapters that haven't survived.
Right.
But Phoenix, LA, San Francisco, Seattle. We had a Portland branch. We're still trying to figure out some things there. And then we originally had a Vegas branch, but Simon Apex is doing an event called Movement there now, which is basically breaks. So we're just we don't care who it is. It doesn't have to be Fractured. We just want more break beats and more people doing break beats.
Right.
Because the more people that are doing break beats, the bigger the network, the more we can all help each other and get more people booked. So when we bring a artist from the UK, for instance, we do a Fractured tour, so we can get them 4 dates, so the price is better.
Right.
And then try to get them booked elsewhere with our connections.
Just connect it all together so their trip makes sense. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah.
So I see the expansion. Is there any other like maybe big goals that you haven't shared with anybody that you want to share with us that you're looking to do in your future, late term? Like, what's the vision?
My vision is like, I really need to hunker down this fall and make more break beats. I have a couple that are almost done, that I need to get out there. I want to be on more breakbeat labels. I really want to try to be like, I'm already this face of breaks already. Right. And not just breakbeats, like I make house music and I still want to make house music.
For sure.
But as far as traveling as a DJ, getting booked as a DJ outside of Seattle, I feel like breaks is going to be a little bit more tangible for me. And then I also, another person that you might be interested to have on your show is actually Erin Bailey, EKB. So she is working with CG Agency, and she's really in my corner to try to get me more exposure outside of Seattle.
Very cool.
And we brought a DJ from Spain here. Raul is his name, and he was so humble and amazing. Yeah. And we booked him. We were supposed to be at Cremwork, but things happened, and we ended up at this pot shop. It actually ended up being a really cool Halloween party. But what I liked about him is he just like showed up. Like, I was like, hey, I got to go to the venue early because I had to like decorate and stuff. And it was like, I had to create this venue out of nothing, And he was like, no, let's go to the venue. And he was like putting up decorations and like moving ladders. And like that just reminded me like that wholesome community thing. And I was like, oh, okay. So I'm hoping to maybe go to Spain and use that connection to
I'm
play
betting
in Spain.
it will work in your favor. Yeah. And you did bring up one other thing that's funny is I think a lot of people when they think of DJing. You know, the maybe in the beginning, right? They don't understand. And that's why I was so interested in the events, because there's a shit ton of work on the front end. There's a shit ton of work during the event. There's a shit ton of work. Like when that event's done and everybody's out, you just got to pack up the decks and do most of the time, right? Like there's a lot to it.
That's one thing I like about clubs, though.
For sure.
I kind of can just show up. Yeah, I can kind of just show up, tune the sound, make sure people have what they need, and be an actual host and not have to worry about running around doing all of that stuff. That's one thing I like about that. But like there's still that fun excitedness and I got to get a sound system here. Yeah.
I think we should get you on the decks because, you know, I'm going to share a little secret that when you actually messaged me on Facebook Messenger and you said, does it have to be house? And I said, no, get fucking weird. Like, no, like, yes, Seattle House Mafia. And yes, we love house music, but like, no, I want to see what you want to play when you want to play it, when there's no other pressure besides you just like laying it down. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, we're going to get to that. Is there anything else? I know you're playing part of the Viva 12-hour at Monkey Loft, right? On August 19th. Yep. And that's also John Lemon's thing and the whole Viva crew. That's going to be a badass night.
And Amy's actually after me.
Nice.
And then I also do have a release coming out on Feral One.
Okay.
Their compilation on the 25th of August. And it is a breaks track. It's called Luna.
Nice.
Yeah.
Is that a solo deal or did you collab on that one?
That one's a solo track.
Oh yeah.
Yep. And I'm super excited to be on that compilation and just to have another breaks track out there. I technically only have one on a breaks label. Okay. And then one that was like a remix contest situation. But yeah.
But I have a feeling there's going to be more. It sounds like more.
Yeah, I have like 4 that are about 85% done.
And I don't know you well, but it seems like when you laser in your focus, shit kind of gets done, right?
Yeah, I also don't want to release anything that I'm not like 100%.
Yeah,
I mean, 95% because we're never 100%. We always find something we want to fix.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all I got, unless you got anything else.
No, I think that's it.
Yeah,
I
thanks
appreciate
for coming in.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking me. And,
of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you for coming. Thank you for taking the time. I know you got a busy schedule, so it was great to have you here. Great to get to meet you. Well, I met you, but actually get to know you, which is what I really like. So
yeah,
let's cut you loose.
Coming loose.
All right.